my name is DJ Moreau. I'm the Senior Director of Programs and Partnerships at Games for Change. And I'm really honored to be here today to talk about esports and education. I've got some incredible folks here that I've gotten to know really over the past month or so. And I really want them to share their story with you. I think with esports, we've seen a lot of information sort of coming top down. And what really resonated for me with this group is that it's been a community and grassroots effort. And sort of hearing from Josh, who's been a teacher for 30 years, and Tristan.
20.
He's not that old.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jeremy.
This sounds
Got you.
honest. And Tristan, who has worked in the library for
20 years.
There it is.
Yeah.
And so, first and foremost, both Jocelyn and Tristan have worked with young people as their passion, and that is the focus. And so sort of this unique experience that they've had with gaming and with esports has really been eye-opening for both of them, as I don't think it was necessarily expected or planned. So I'm going to let folks just do a quick round of introductions. We are going to keep this very conversational, if you can't tell already. There's a fun energy and dialogue about this that I want to keep alive, while also letting folks really make sure that they can, explain their point of view. But why don't we start with Ty? Why don't you just give us sort of your story?
Let's go, Ty.
And then Tristan, you can build on that and talk a little bit too about the Cleveland Library, and then
Sure.
We'll turn it over to Josh and Jeremy.
Hey everyone, my name is Ty, or my tie-dye. I work for the Cleveland Public Library. I was invited to be on the esports committee there like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Two or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing about it was incorporating more female and women gamers. And so it's been a great experience. And I also stream. Just have to add that.
That's
Okay.
Mario Kart.
Oh, okay.
Bring it.
He's
So
really good at
everyone
Mario.
has an issue with me saying this, but I am the best Mario Kart player on this
Maybe
side
in
of
your
the
area,
hemisphere.
but definitely not
Is
in
this
the world.
okay? We gotta stop right now. Is this just the Switch Mario Kart, or is this all Mario Kart?
Oh no, I can play any Mario Kart, any
Oh
racing
my
game,
God.
really.
That,
But
people right now are tweeting you.
it's okay. It is
That's
definitely okay.
hilarious.
I will
And-
take.
And Ty, where are you going to school soon?
I am next month. I will be going to Oregon State University to study ecological engineering.
Awesome.
Trying to save the world.
Awesome.
Save the world.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody's got
We need that. Yeah, right.
I'm gonna try.
And so my name is Tristan Wheeler. I work here at the Cleveland Public Library, as stated. And we got the CPL Play, as it's known now, our gaming and esports initiative. We got that started officially probably about 4 years ago or something, about 4 years or so. But we've been having gaming at the Cleveland Public Library for quite a long time, probably something closer to 13 to 15 years ago. And so gaming is something that I believe naturally kind of started to occur when you have a public place and you got a lot of students, after school that are getting together and they want to do something that's going to be fun. You can watch a movie only but so many times, and you can pass around the comic books and the manga, but so many times. But gaming is something that everybody can get really engaged in. It's very interactive. It's competitive. And it kind of satiated everybody's need to get together and do something together. And so we've been supporting that for a number of years now.
Great. And I love, just real quick, before I know I was saying we'll do this quick, but I loved how you were talking about how it started with some anime students coming to the library a little bit.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And having those students then kind of break off. We just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So again, probably closer to 14 or so years ago, we did have a small group of kids who used to come to the library and just talk gaming. And then they kind of started like a video game club. And then some years later, there was an anime club that existed at the Cleveland Public Library. And within that, there were people who really wanted to play video games a lot. And so as a result, there was like a splinter group from this anime club of people who wanted to start gaming. And so we started to do these tournaments. And so the Cleveland Public Library, the main branch here in downtown Cleveland, has an auditorium that seats 315 people. So we thought, wouldn't it be amazing to put some of these video games on the large screen, like a movie theater type screen? And so naturally we tried that, and it was amazing. So we played all kinds of games on the big screen, from Dance Dance Revolution to Street Fighter. And I believe we probably even played Tetris or some other puzzle game. It was just a really good time for everybody. And over the years, we've expanded our game offering. So we've had Atari 2600, we've had Super Nintendo, we've had Sega Dreamcast, and now, we're offering the likes of what you probably see in the background, Xbox One and PlayStation 4 and things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get back to sort of some of your stories on how the club and the experience and the events that you're doing really bring folks together from all ages. And I even loved how you were saying even some of the security guards, were starting to play with the kids.
Right.
It's really just a way to connect and bring a community together. So I won't try to steal all of your points. But
No problem. Yeah.
Let's see. So Jeremy, why don't you just sort of tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll have Josh tell us about the program and sort of your story too.
All right, then. Hi, I'm Jeremy. As you can tell probably by the nameplate in the corner. I've been with the club since the start of high school, but then I've been with the organization since its fruition back in January or so, and I've just been trying to help. Yeah, was it last year already?
It was last January. Yeah, 2 Januaries ago.
Oh, dang, it's already been 2 Januaries. I'm getting old. But yeah, as a student, it's good to be able to go into the student body and see what everyone else wants to hear. Because sometimes, even though Bound is a very good teacher and is able to interact with the students well, sometimes you do need that, I guess, student point of view to be able to ask what's going on and how everything should be incorporated into our schedules and things like that.
Yeah, you're talking about our video game club specifically at our school, yeah.
Yeah, but that's just a little tease because we're going to go into the Video Game Clubs of America later on.
Tease.
Yeah. That's great. And Josh, maybe tell us a little bit about your club and how it got started and why you're doing this.
So yeah, they saved me for last. For the record, everybody, they put me last so everybody else would have their time. They've had it, right? Official. Okay, so what's that? Basically, to make a long 8 years short, my son qualified as on the autism spectrum, and if you know anything about the autism spectrum, it is an umbrella like the term esports. It's this big umbrella that covers lots and lots and lots of things, and so he's extremely light on this. So he has very small social issues that he's working through, and so so what happened was I had a revelation one day, and if you watch the TED Talk she just threw out, you just put up, you'll get the whole story, but I had a revelation one day that I was basically failing as a father, and I might tear up here, I did on stage. Oof. And so I was basically realized I was failing, and so I was at Walmart, and never forget, I was at Walmart and he was playing Mario Kart, interestingly enough, on the screen. They, Walmart was selling Nintendo Wii's, right? In the back by the games. And so they'd have a screen up and they'd have a couple controllers. And so he picked up a controller one day. And now you have to understand, I could speak well with my son. He wasn't speaking. Those were parts of his problems. And so he picked up the controller, and then another little boy who he didn't know walked up, and they just started playing and talking. And I was like, that's the whole gem. There's my way into my son's brain. So threw all the dreams I had out the window about sports and my kid's going to be an All-American and blah, 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 follow in his dad's footsteps and play lacrosse and blah, you know,
Yeah.
American dad. And I was like, you know, here, it's a new chapter. So 3 weeks later, it was about 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks later, something, I'm sitting in my school, and three guys who, if you go to this shameless plug website, you'll see them. Three kids are sitting in my mentor, Sarav, Zion, and Aiden, and they were talking trash about Xbox versus PlayStation, who's better. And I chimed in on the PlayStation side, and they were dumbfounded that like a 40-year-old guy knew anything about gaming. And so by the end of the day, they were like, "Can we start a gaming club?" And I approached it from a business model. I said, you can't just walk up to the principal and be like, "I want to start a gaming club." They'll laugh at you. So we came up with, so we're going to build social skills for kids that don't have it, right? Which will prepare them for life and career paths. And so I'm like, the education in me is kicking in, right? Like preparing children for the future, you know, that type of thing. And my principal was amazing, and he said, "Yeah, go for it." So by the end of the week, he had actually bought us a PlayStation 4,
Nice.
and he bought it for the club, and I was like, "That's crazy." So I had 120 kids by the end of the week sign up for a club that was just, it was really just a off the cuff thing, but I built it for my son, knowing he would come to my school one day. And so when he would come to my school, he would have friends, because I realized that if I could make it like a safe space for kids like my son to gather, well, they're not going to get picked on as much. So that's how it started for us, our first club. You want me to keep going, or do you want to? Because I can keep going. You know, I can keep going. Like, this is.
I know. That can be my hard one on this panel.
I'll break if you need me to. So we started our first club at that moment, and this could be something else if you wanted.
And I think I really want this to be, you know, an open dialogue. And Tristan, if you have, you know, questions, and Ty, you know, let's just all sort of, you know, keep this as just an conversation. I think that's really the most helpful for people. And you know, again, to me, what sort of resonated for both of you is that, you know, it's the student. A lot of this was student led. Mm-hmm. It was the students coming together. Tristan, can you talk about your role maybe at the library and like how it happened?
Yeah.
Like,
so one thing that Josh said there that you know, really was a similarity to something that I experienced is you know, again, way back in 14 years ago. You know, a lot of youth came together, and so, you know, they kind of said like, "Hey, we would like to do a video game program, very similar." And so, you know, we looked at it and thought like, how can we do this? And so we kind of put some things together. And so we had these two old, oh man, like seems so old and archaic now, but the old tube TVs, you know, on the media carts, you know, we had one on each side of the room, and we brought in a GameCube, and I think we just had 2 GameCubes, and it was the day that Soul Calibur 2 came out, which is a really, really popular game. Nice. And so we had a big group of people come in, and we provided some refreshments and everything. So it just reminded me of that. And so talking about my role here, at the Cleveland Public Library, I am an audiovisual and event planning specialist. And so what that means is any kind of programs, events, guest speakers, just about anything that goes on in the library, I am the person who is helping to set up the microphones, speakers, projectors, TVs, and all of that. And so naturally, video games are a part of that world. And so it made perfect sense for us to kind of work that right into what the library provided as a service to the people of the city of Cleveland and outside of it. So it was really cool to be able to kind of provide that platform where people could connect and people could come together, and then we could build a community around it.
Yeah, and that's where my story and your story overlap pretty hardcore, because what's happened was, you know, I would play video games in my gaming club before VGC USA was born, right? This nonprofit. I would play video games, and I would just turn Mario Kart on or Wii Bowling, and the noise would get into the halls. Like, just
Oh,
turn the
wow.
volume up a little bit. And
Right.
because we have inside my schedule, we have a mentor period built into the middle of our day. So my schedule is perfect for this. So it's like a half an hour window where I'm supposed to be building relationships, mentoring. And so I would just turn the volume up, and then you would see kids just flock to this room. And people were like, "What is going on in there?" And I was like, "Dude, we're just playing games." Like,
Right.
and but what we're really doing is we're building relationships. And
Right.
I had a guy tell me once in education that 20 years from now, people aren't going to remember anything you taught, Josh. That's what he said to me, and I was like, that hurts that you think nothing I say will be remembered. And he goes,
Wow.
"No, they won't. But what they will remember is how you interacted with them in that one moment in which they needed a yes or a no or a hug. Like that's so that actually is that's like at the core of me as a person. So so having my son and then having this gaming club, DJ's having a fly issue. Sorry, you got me there. I was like, wow, okay, ninja status. She just earned her ninja badge. And so so we, video game clubs. It helped me connect with my kids in a school, and then it helped me connect with my personal child, and then we justified ourselves to the world by doing social events. Like civic responsibility is a big thing I push. So like going bowling at retirement homes, we bowling with retirement. It's like retirement homes. You take 15 kids and you show up and you play board games and gin rummy with them, and they teach you Rummy Cube, and you're playing croquet at retirement homes. All of a sudden, society can't hate you because you're doing a service. And so we really fought the stereotypes, but because of esports, the stereotypes, it's a lot less now. The term esport has opened some doors.
Right.
Though I don't think I think it should be called competitive gaming. But it's esports. Esports has opened some doors.
Well, esports ended up being a term that could be marketed a little easier, I think. And kind of touching on that, so one of the questions in the chat there, someone was asking if the Cleveland Public Library collaborates with or competes against any local schools. And so thanks to James in the chat there, James Talley. He's also a part of our team here.
Nice.
And thank you so much for catching that.
Right.
But it's an interesting history that the Cleveland Public Library has with Cleveland Metropolitan School District. Technically, talking about the history of the library, the Cleveland Public Library started off as the Cleveland Public School Library. This is way before any of our time. And back then, it was connected to the school system. Over time, though, it became a city library, and we're still very connected to the school district. And so in recent times, the Cleveland Public Library has collaborated with Cleveland Public Schools as well as other regional schools like Hathaway Brown. About 2 years ago, the Ohio Esports Triathlon began, and DJ and I both played a part in that as part of the advisory committee. And then last year, the Mischief League continued from where that left off. And so the Cleveland Public Library did have a team in both of those leagues that played against schools in the area. And so what was really cool, and which was a little bit crazy, Ty is familiar with our team space, we actually had a good mix of students in that one space. So we had some students that went to some of the schools that were playing against each other all in the same room, and they wanted to play for the library against their school. I was like, well,
nice.
You can't be on two teams at the same time, but it was really funny though. So we're really connected with the schools, and we do try to work with not just the high schools, but also with universities and colleges in the area as well.
That's awesome. Ty, can you talk a little bit about, I know you mentioned sort of the importance of girls and like getting more females involved. What has sort of been any little things you've noticed, or what has that sort of been like?
So before I came onto the committee, I don't think I attended an event before I got to the committee.
Did you?
But
anyway,
when I came to the committee, I realized that there were pretty much nothing but fighting games. That it was like heavily like most of the event. And I know that fighting games doesn't necessarily attract a lot of women. Like there are some serious female like fighting champions or whatever, but like in general, I don't know, it wasn't enough to bring in the type of crowd that we needed. And so
not to mention the attitude that is within that genre of games is not really that welcoming either, but continue.
True.
Yeah.
And so bringing in stuff like more Mario games and Mario Kart and like Just
Dance. Tell me
Just
Dance.
Dance.
Yeah,
Just Dance,
yeah, music rhythm,
Dance.
yep.
Rock band and stuff. It did a lot. And Tristan and I were talking about this earlier. We've seen more outsiders come in, like women from the outside and not from organizations that we worked with.
Right.
And so I knew that I knew what I was talking about when
No, she's totally right. We had to diversify the different genres of games that we had. Fighting games were so dominant. You're completely right. Like they were so dominant, and she kind of had a vision for the future to see like, hey, this is not really going to grow if you keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So you're
It's
totally right.
Strictly for the fighting community.
Right.
But even it was better for like the children that come in because they can't keep up with the fighters that come in to play those games. And so, I don't know, giving them other things to play, it opens them up and makes them feel better about themselves. And it makes it easier for everyone to communicate when you're not like playing fighting games and listening to the trash talk.
Yeah, I think you're hitting at a core point of what VGC USA is about, and I think you're doing it naturally. And I think this is the new normal that I think most people who organize these events are slowly realizing is that it's not all about winning and losing, and it's not about like fighting games. It's win or lose. I won, you lost. Like.
Right.
And it's in the moment you push play, it's smash buttons and there's no conversation, and it's I need to prove I'm better than you. Call of Duty is the same way, with the exception of in-game mic to the rest of my team. Like there are lots of games today that are not there. It's winning takes precedence over socialization. Games have always been things played by societies. The history teachers and me talking. Societies have always played games to teach lessons and to settle disputes and to these things, and like they have importance. And I think the push with the people who make money off of this is win or lose. It's about winning and losing. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to get political here, but I think that we need to check ourselves on winning and losing isn't the only thing in life.
Yes.
That's where VGC USA has been born, because our goal is to start gaming clubs in every secondary school in the country. Like that's our goal. I might not ever see it in my lifetime, but that's I guess that's the big goal. So the idea is starting a gaming club, and I think Sebastian had asked on the chat there, how do you get around the higher powers? Well, the answer is you use their words against them. Can you show that thing now, the castle? Is that possible or no?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what it is.
Before we do that though.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think but I'll show that in just a minute here, Josh. I just wanted to also pull out what Ty was saying that I think is so beautiful, that, there's so much of discussion around, how do we make esports more inclusive? And it could be as easy as just not calling it esports and even though that's like such the buzzword, it's like, it's saying that just video games, like there's such a power of using, the power of video games to bring people together. And I think both of you have told me stats that, in our video game clubs or in our video game events, we have, hundreds of people come, and maybe like 10 or 15 of those people are actually like esports and like a professional one. And so, it's interesting, just that subtle difference, attracts different people. And so the more open it is, the more different types of games you're playing can really go far.
Mhm.
And I know we haven't heard from Jeremy, so I just want to hear
Jeremy.
from Jeremy.
I mean, technically, you've heard words from me in the chat. I was trying to help
He's
out
been
Sebastian.
chatting it up.
I
He's
love
been
that.
chatting it up.
We're
Yeah,
chatting
go
away.
for it, Jeremy.
But Jeremy, if you just have I know you had some stories you kind of wanted to share about the work that and the curriculum that Josh has created. So maybe we'll do that, and then I'll bring up the actual standards, Josh, and you can kind of show people what that looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Esports,
I was gonna
man.
talk
Go for it.
yeah, esports. So our school has an esports team. We started officially sometime last year with League of Legends, and everyone knows the stereotypes of League of Legends. It's a really toxic community and stuff like that. But I think from that, you can learn a lot about yourself. And if you fast forward to like near the end of our first season, we ended up getting a win against someone else from our own district in the same building, actually, because we split up with Chambersburg White and Chambersburg Blue. But from that moment, we had these really close games that were neck and neck. And even though they were so neck and neck, the winning team, which was I was on, regrettably, ended up getting caught up in the heat of the moment of our victory. And we started gloating, a lot of like carrying our one teammate on the back. And you think for high schoolers near the end of their high school career wouldn't be gloating like, I don't want to say brats, but like we were gloating.
Tell
We were
them how I
gloating
responded.
excessively. Yeah, we were gloating excessively. So then Josh had to come in with the coach mindset and put us in our place, because as teenagers, why are we gloating? We should learn better than that. We said we wouldn't do it, but then we got victory, got into our head, and instead of congratulating the other team for a job well done, we ended up charging in there, like saying, "Oh, hey, we won, you guys didn't," kind of stuff like that. And I think from that moment forward, we learned and taught ourselves, hey, guys, we need to stop doing that kind of stuff, teach each other, hold each other accountable. And even if the emotions aren't there, to just stay level-headed. Even if you win, you lose, it's still a game. So you just got to like cool down and then congratulate each other, pat yourselves on the back and stuff like that.
Yeah, sportsmanship is really, really important in general when he's talking about all competitive gaming, whether it's the formal like esports or just any competitive game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are lots of leagues out there right now in the esports world. I should start saying competitive sports world, and they're all vying for which schools and what teams are going to be playing where. To make this like a sports data analogy for anybody who doesn't understand competitive gaming, it's like in the 1990s. I know I'm dating Ty. 1990s, I said it. In the 1990s. Growing up playing lacrosse, all you had to do was go to a lacrosse camp and you would end up on a college team and somewhere down the line because the coaches would come and watch you. And then what happened was the club system was born, and all of a sudden all these kids were on club teams and they were playing at more specifically, more competitive levels of tournaments. So certain kids got left behind. Well, right now you have leagues forming like clubs all over the country, claiming up, like eating up pieces of ground and going, oh, well, I've got 6,000 schools in my thing and I've got 8,000, I've got whatever. And I think that, what the states and education, like the moment Pennsylvania becomes the Pennsylvania Interscholastic Esports, and that's part of the athletics, all those companies are going to get shut down really quickly because Jeremy would just play for his high school, just like any other sport. So I think we're in like this middle road thing right now where there's a lot of hype and a lot of programs are, STEM skills and whatever and all this stuff. I personally worry about, are we losing our children because of those numbers? 120 kids in my club, but only 23 play esports. So what do I do with 97 other kids? And what am I doing? And so so I'm on the social emotional part of it, arguing for it. I understand esports is great, but I am about the student individually.
But if I may chime in, one thing about this discussion regarding esports, and we talked about this once before, there will be few people who will go into esports at that level. But, one of the ways that we kind of look at what we do here at the Cleveland Public Library and a lot of these grassroots efforts, like what we do, is we compare it a lot to like Pee Wee sports. Every kid wants to play a sport, and kind of like Pee Wee leagues, everybody's in there, whether they're going to be the greatest player or not, they're there because they have a love for the game. They want to kind of get in there and have that experience. And so that's one thing that we're trying to do, because personally, one of the things that I noticed when you talk about the highest level of esports is there's a lack of diversity. And I think a big part of the reason for that is the fact that the introductory stage of it all is just not well supported. So hypothetically, if we can open up esports or competitive gaming more for everyone to try it and to kind of get a feel for what they might like and what they might not like, we'll see more diversity at that highest level. Because not everyone's going to immediately decide, hey, I want to play League of Legends or I want to play Overwatch at the highest level. It takes some skills, a skill set to have. One thing that I share a lot with people that I play Overwatch with is I was not a person who played first-person shooters. I actually could not play them. I've tried to play them since Doom and Wolfenstein 3D. But
there you go.
But first-person shooters, they actually make me feel very, very nauseous when I play them. Almost all of them.
Really?
The first-person shooter that I was actually able to play for more than 30 minutes at a time was Overwatch. So I loved Overwatch getting into it because I was like, oh my God, I can play a first-person shooter for the first time, and I was really enjoying it. But what I found out was I quickly realized that I was lacking the skill set to play that type of game that everyone else had, because they had been playing the Wolfensteins and they had been playing the Red Factions and they had been playing all of these first-person shooters since, whatever year. So what's the other one? Oh my God, Quake. Oh my God, Quake really made me so sick. And so they had a skill set that the first day they played Overwatch, they knew exactly what they had to do. They quickly adapted to what they needed to do. But for me, it was like the first time I had ever really played a first-person shooter. So I think of that a lot when we have a patron that comes into the library, or a student that's coming from a school, coming to after school, coming into the library, and they want to sit down and play a game for the very first time. They have no knowledge of that genre. They might be playing Puyo Puyo Tetris, or they might be playing Mario, or they might be playing Bomberman or something, and they've never played a game like that before. So they need to be able to get their feet wet with that. They need to be able to learn what are the basics for this game, because if they're ever going to go to that esports level, that needs to be nurtured, and we need to build a community that's open and accepting of everyone so that they can learn how to play those games.
So even going back a little bit, for the women that show up to our esports events and actually gets into the tournaments and stuff, like some of these women are just as good as the boys that come in.
Some of them are way better.
But they have to deal with like
stereotypes. Say it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they get discouraged by like the other players, like, oh, I didn't know you could be that good at that game. It's like a lot of little microaggressions, and then some people are just like upfront and like blunt and just rude about it, and that discourages women from continuing going and like going to other tournaments, because I'm sure it's not specific to this area, and it's probably gaming as a whole.
Right.
Even though, like, statistically speaking, for gaming in general, women play more games than men do.
Yeah, more technically, yeah.
Right, that's right. If you look at it in its entirety, that's absolutely right. And so, that's our role. And we come up against the more serious competitive components here in the city of Cleveland. And so, whenever we do kind of come up against that, we tell them our role. Ty beats everybody in Mario Kart 8.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Go ahead. There you go.
but we always tell people, our role here is not so much. We don't want to take the title of, all things esports in Cleveland. We want people to understand that we're trying to introduce everyone to these forms of games and these forms of cooperative, competitive, all of it. And so what Josh was saying, and I don't want to derail or go too far away from what he was talking about, but I see this whole gaming thing. There are different layers to it. You have the person who never really got a chance to play, or they felt too shy to play in front of other people. Mm-hmm. Then you have people who get into it and they realize, like, hey, I'm pretty decent at this. I want to get better. If they're a student, they can go to their school and maybe they have, video game clubs USA that they can actually join, and they can be with people who are like-minded and they can hone those skills. If they're in college, they can go to their university, League of Legends club or whatever else, and they can continue to get better. If they have the ability to travel, they can travel to different states and go to these different tournaments. And so there's just different levels to it, but we need to make sure that each part of that is supported well.
Yeah, and I think institutions and organizations should start seeing gaming as a career, because it is a career for so many people now, mm-hmm. and it's steadily growing. And some people are still treating it like, oh, they're just playing games. 100%. No, people are getting paid lots of money to play games.
Right.
So it's a career.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's a whole industry as well. It's not just the player. It's and this is the STEM part of it, is the design, and it's the writers of the world writing stories, and the animators, and I mean it reaches into schools really well with that idea.
And so Josh, why don't I quickly just show folks some of the curriculum you created, and
if you could, that'd be great. If you go to the shameless plug there, you'll see it under curricula. We've written, and you double click on it. I learned that you got to double click on the screen, right? You can download all these. We have 5 states right now. That there are 5 states. So Sebastian asked the question earlier: how do you get past the people that are in charge that hate on your games? Well, what you do is you use the words of people above them against them. So and I'll talk about the United States. Each state has its own Department of Ed, and each Department of Ed has a stance on social emotional learning goals. In other words, every school has a guidance counselor, right? So what does a guidance counselor do? It nurtures and builds social emotional learning, confidence and things. So there are certain rules. If you can just pause on that map there, there are certain ways to use the already established educational goals against the institution so that they can't say no. Because all you're trying to do is what they want you to do anyhow. So what I did is last 2 years ago, year and a half ago, we aligned for Pennsylvania, and I think Pennsylvania and Illinois are the first 2 states. We aligned the educational standards of the public school systems, Pennsylvania Department of Education and Illinois State Department of Education, with this group called CASEL. CASEL is CASEL. And CASEL, if you zoom in on this, is a social emotional learnings. They're the juggernaut. They're everywhere. And so they have 5 competencies, which is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and then you have all of these things, right? And so what I did is I basically translated these core competencies into, hey, let's play Mario Kart and teach that. And so if you can scroll one up a little bit, if you don't mind. So you have your competencies in the classroom, and you scroll, like a page. I don't know if that's up or down for you, DJ. I don't know which way you consider that.
Are you going to go down?
Yeah. So go down another page, and you'll see that it's all typed out, it's all written, and then you'll get to the actual standards. Yeah, if you can hold here. These are the standards of Ohio. So where you see A2.4 or whatever, A1.1 is actually the standard Ohio has agreed to. And what that standard does is it works on critical thinking and social emotional questions, develop skills and acknowledge constructivity, Okay, so if you scroll 6 or 7 pages down, you'll actually see Ohio's written words. So all I've done is I've taken what Ohio has agreed to, and then I've applied games to it. So this is actually what Ohio, so A1 is demonstrating awareness of personal emotions. There it is. And so when you're talking about gameplay, you have when you just lost. You know, what emotions are you going to go through? Let's have a conversation. And this is the mentor part of like being a teacher. It gives me a moment to actually talk shop on real life things. So then if you scroll down even farther in this list, you'll see I have teachable moments. And again, this is Ohio's words. I've just organized it so that you have how to start a video game club. Here, if you could pause on this one, 23 teachable moments that I've run across, like things that I know I've done. I guarantee Tristan has done every one of these, except I wrote it down. That's it. Like number 11 is knowing when to take a break from the game. Like how many times have you? See,
Everybody stop playing. Let's eat.
I have to pull the Wi-Fi out of my kid's computer. I literally have to pull the Wi-Fi card because she hasn't learned that I'm angry. I shouldn't be playing. Okay, so if you scroll a little bit more, so there's teachable moments, right? And then you'll get to actually what happens. Yeah, I think you want a little bit. Yeah, one more. Just the next page. This is all free download. When you see Mario Kart or something, you'll see a game there. 3 pillars of game. We've talked about those. Here you go, Mario Kart. So here is, if you held a Mario Kart tournament, here are the castle standards that you could teach. And here's actually how to run a Mario Kart tournament. You could do fastest lap. You could do straight bracket status. You could put and it's all written out on page 16 and 17. And again, there are standard rules with this. Shaking of the hands, which we have to adjust because I don't know what the new normal on shaking of the hands is these days.
Like a little elbow touch.
Yeah, little elbows, or like, does this still work? Does pounded still work?
Yeah.
I don't know. Or like, are we going Vulcan high fives or something? Like, I don't know. But like, you put those things in place, and it's all free, and it's there, and like, the idea is to spread the word that gaming clubs have value, just like Tristan was saying and Ty was saying. Like, it's nothing to laugh at. Like, the statistic I always use is when people start talking about that's video games. I say to them, I go, in 2018, and I'm probably wrong, someone's going to check me. The video game industry made $118 billion, right? The video game industry, $118 billion. So I'm speaking to the normal person. The NFL, the National Football League, made $61 billion.
Right.
So the NFL is this big thing, but the video game industry doubled their money. Right. So it's not going anywhere. And then on top of it, we have kids getting scholarships for college to play League of Legends. We have 3 kids going to Juniata next year. That wouldn't have happened before. So it is not going anywhere. So that's how you fight it, and you make it, you do your thing. So
one thing, there's 2 comments actually in the chat that came up that are around the topic of with young ladies or women in gaming. The second one here is, what games do you see girls gravitate to more? I'm curious to know from everyone what games they see girls gravitate to more. But Ty, do you want to lead this one off?
I want to go back to that one, like, how do you support?
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was another question. It said, how do you support young women? Hold on one second. Oh, how do you support the girls who are confronting the male-heavy group? Was the first one. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I have to think about this. Yeah.
It's kind of hard because the boys are such jerks.
I agree.
But it's like, you just have to help them stay encouraged to continue playing the game. And people will say anything when they're hurt or when they feel threatened or anything. And you just have to continue to encourage them and try to help them develop some type of thick skin, because unfortunately, they'll have to continue to go through the same things. So they should never take it personal. It should just be like, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say.
Can I chime in on that? I've had students, girls go through the exam. Girls specifically go through the same thing, and while I tell the girl, "Hey, thicken skin," right? I also tell the boy who said it, "You shouldn't have said that because X, Y, and Z." And that's and that's when you're in a club like we are building, or a sports team, like a competitive team, like. Communication is at the crux of all of it. Communication, cooperation, 100%. Collaboration. That's the jam. So yeah, I like. Yeah, you're right. What do you do though?
So
Right.
I would say ways that I support our young ladies who are in our community, whether it's at our CPL play events formally or in the teen space every day after school. Number one, I always try to make sure that I listen to everyone and what they're talking about, whatever their concerns are, whatever it is that they would like to see more of, and things like that. That is my first step in providing support, is listening, because I don't ever want to approach anything with the mindset that, oh, I know the answer for what you want. Like I try to make sure that I listen first. When there are conflicts, and usually they're never very serious. That's one thing I'm so appreciative of. All of the gaming events that we've had here, we've never had any very serious conflict. And I do believe that a big part of that, that kind of sets us apart from other gaming events, is that we do have on-site security that's in the building just in general. So with that in mind, I do think that people keep themselves within certain extremes. However, that doesn't mean that we haven't been without any kind of conflict. So when I do notice certain things, I try to, again, listen first to see exactly what's going on, try to understand the situation best I can. And I do provide support in the way of finding out what it is that I can do to remedy the situation. And as Josh just said, I do believe in talking to our youth, and not because we're a public library, we don't have the ability to discipline the youth in ways that teachers do. But
schools can,
approach.
but I can't.
But
I can talk to them. I can talk to the youth, like from man to man, so to speak, and say, "Hey, dude, like, come on, that's not a smart thing to do, or that's not a smart thing to say." And then I can maybe take them to the side and have a more one-on-one discussion. But we don't. Our situation is a little bit different, though, being in a public library where we are connected to the schools, but we're not educators, we're not teachers, and we do not have a connection to the family or the home. We cannot really discipline the youth other than, unfortunately, removing them from the library. We can say, like, all right, your time's up, see you later. So, we've never really had to do that. We had an incident before where some really weird things were going on with an individual, but this wasn't a student. But that said, it's mostly a matter of communication, and communication is everything. It is so important. And I'll end on this note too. Communication is one of the other added benefits of this community building effort. We were talking about this before we went live here. Part of the issue with this community, there's a stigma, right? There's a stigma with gamers, antisocial or socially challenged and things like that. And so we try to do things to help people develop themselves socially. So one of the big goals that we had for 2020, although things have changed dramatically from what we all thought we were going to do, we had a series of speaking engagements in which we would hear from many different kinds of people from our community. So in February, our last in-person event, we had an African-American experience in the gaming community event where we had a panel discussion where people could talk about their experiences, traveling, different genres of games, how they were treated, and so on and so forth. It wasn't all, bad or sad stories. It was something that I thought a lot of people benefited from. Ty was also on that panel. And so I thought it was a good discussion. And so that's one of the things that we're hoping to do more of with future events, is to continue to build discussions around being in this community and how you can improve as a person and how you can help other people have a good experience while they're in it as well.
Yeah, I'd love to, Tristan, maybe you could just talk a little bit about, I think that one of the themes that we've been talking about is just how video games in general bring so many different people together, and in some ways kind of level the playing field. And you said you brought in like an old school Atari where.
Right. So actually, the Cleveland Public Library receives donations all the time, and which we're very grateful for. And someone donated, amazingly, an Atari 2600 with a library of probably more than 50 games. And I mean, they gave us peripherals, controllers, and a lot of these games were in the box, and they were like almost pristine condition. So with that, we were able to put on an Atari 2600 on an HD TV and on a projector, which was amazing because, you know, it's crazy to see, you know, such a old pixelated game in HD.
Yeah.
But with that, it was really cool because we had an open event. And so we had some people who were a little older, some of our elderly community come in and play the Atari 2600 and then teach the youth who were, you know, between the ages of, you know, 12 to like 18. It was amazing. It was really, really cool. So I hope that we can do another retro gaming event like that sometime soon.
Yeah, and then
cool. Oh, go ahead, Jeremy, please.
I was gonna say, to bounce off the retro gaming thing, we actually had a teacher at our school. I was talking to a guy in chat here, Jeremy Yanofsky, about speed running. He actually, his name is Joshua Barra. Wait, Joseph Barra. I'm mixing people up.
We're the popular.
Yeah, but he actually approached the club with an idea about retro gaming and speed running, and we actually did what Tristan did, where we hooked up that old console to an HD TV, and as kids are just walking through the hallways, you'll see them stop, look up at the TV, and it's I forget which Mario it is, but it's that like quick minute in between classes, kids would try speed running, and you'll see like it made a kind of a distraction because it'd be walking straight, then you have to walk around these group of kids and then start walking to your next class. But it was just cool seeing all these kids come together to try and beat Mario, especially since it's like
Joe Barra,
an older game.
Yeah, Joe Barra what brought speedrunning in because that's a whole new elevated like evolved thing to do, and so he, you know, again talking about groups mixing. Now we're not talking age, but we're talking jocks and geeks coming together over a new challenge that they hadn't even thought of. And I mean, how fast can you get through the first level of the first Super Nintendo Mario Bros? Apparently it's like 12 seconds or something. Like, not for me, but
So I think we'll start, if people want, I know we've kind of been keeping this very conversational, which was sort of the goal of the discussion. But if folks want to start putting questions in the chat, we can do sort of more of an official Q&A.
I was going to say that games we see women play the most is probably Just Dance. Just Dance is probably the #1 game, or Step Mania.
I would argue, Step Mania X. We have a lot of people playing Step Mania too.
Yes.
We have some really pro Step Mania players. So if anyone knows anything about Step Mania, it's a game that's very similar to Dance Dance Revolution. And we have a huge community of people who are here in Cleveland that play the music rhythm games. And so we really try to support that with Rock Band 4. We have the whole set with the drums, guitar, the microphone, with Just Dance, Step Mania. What's another one? Guitar Hero. Like, we really try to support that because we have a huge group of people who really love to play those games. Oh, and Dance Central. How can we forget Dance Central?
Yeah.
I'm just kind of looking through the chat here.
Yeah, I think we all did the same thing at the same time. Yeah, Beat Saber has been in the VR realm. Beat Saber.
Yes. Yes.
It's I worry about the kid playing Beat Saber in the VR because they have no spatial awareness, but they are
right.
Like it is a fist fight for life, but it's cool because you see the kid playing. And it's on the monitor, and he's there, or whatever, and everybody's just watching him score, and you're like, man, okay, I get what he's doing. Beat Saber in my school is a big deal.
Yeah, talking about Beat Saber, because I can't believe we actually haven't mentioned this at all. So virtual reality is also a really big component of our events, and so VR, there's quite a cost when you talk about VR. You know, you have to have a PC that's capable. The headsets themselves range from like $600 and up, depending on which one you go with. And so we're very grateful for the fact that the Cleveland Public Library has supported VR pretty heavily. We have 3 VR stations. And so we have Beatmania and a bunch of other VR games too. And so we also have the Oculus And so we have different types of VR technology that people can come in and try. So on one hand, you have the kind of tech demo type stuff where people can come in and say, like, you know, how do we do this VR situation? What is it? And then we have the more advanced VR stuff, which is like Beat Saber. And we've had some people, man, they go in on Beat Saber. I really want to like sit down and play that game someday. And talking about the spatial component of that. So another thing that we're very grateful for is that we have a lot of space here at the library.
Yeah, you need
so
it. You
we actually tape off that area. We put tape on the ground and show people to walk past this space because the person in that space is going to be moving around quite a bit. So it's really cool. And we have the backpack PC. So, you know, it's a PC that actually is like a backpack. And so they can actually wear the computer with the headset and then they can walk around in that space. Yeah, it's really cool.
Why haven't we thought of that?
I haven't even thought about that one. Like that one for my personal school, I think might be a purchase.
Yeah. And so, and lastly, on the VR take, I feel like we should. Hold on, I'm gonna grab some equipment off the table. One second.
All right, here we go. It's like a treasure trove back there.
Right now.
So, one of the coolest things that we were able to launch last year is so we have this steering wheel controller. It's got some glare on it, but anyway, so we wanted to do something that was really different with VR. So we set up a steering wheel with a racing seat, and we got a VR capable game, so they could wear the visor, and when they sat in the seat with the steering wheel, they literally were inside the car in the VR space. Cool. And it was so cool. And people really enjoyed that a lot. So we are always trying to do things that other gaming venues don't. You know, that's how we set ourselves apart from other people in our region. You know, there are people who do have the Tekken and Street Fighter and the fighting game heavy tournaments. We have a group of people who do the music rhythm games. They do Dance Dance Revolution. And so, you know, we know that we can't compete on that level, but what we can compete in is the person on the street, come on in, give this a shot. And if you like it, then we can direct you to where you need to go. And that's our job in the community.
Keep talking and nobody explodes works wonder in VR. Wow. Really? That's
we have
Jonathan Rios just said.
We have only a couple more minutes, and there were a few questions that came up that might be hopefully a quick response, and because I want to hear too from each of you, just in like 30 seconds, like what advice you would give to folks interested in either like starting a club or insights into like esports and education. I know it's like a, but like what sort of, I don't know.
Advice, Tristan, you want to go first or like
wait,
you got...
can you repeat just the end of the question? What was the full question one more time?
Yeah, I'm just curious sort of what your advice would be to folks listening to this conversation and maybe interested in starting, get their library or school more involved. Like what advice, like?
So go ahead. I do have one. I have one.
30 seconds, guys.
My first piece of advice, there's so many different ways to approach this, but my very first piece of advice is find the gaming communities in your city. Find who they are and where they are first. Once you find them, then you can start to build things to cater to those people to a certain degree, or at least kind of get their attention, because I think it's going to be important to have that foot traffic. So that's one of the very first things that's going to be pretty important. At least that's where we started. We did start with people that we knew that were into gaming, and that kind of got us like a head start on building a community. And then once the new faces sort of show up, this is not a shot at anybody, but those more competitive-minded people, they kind of go away because they want the more competitive environment. But that's okay, because now you can start to, you know, raise that next generation of gamers. So
build that community.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I'm lucky enough to actually be in the community that you're looking for, because I believe that every school naturally, and the more technology we put in these schools becomes a hub for gaming clubs, because every kid in my district has either a Chromebook or an iPad. So that means they all have access to things to communicate with each other. Board games are, and I'll shout out to Max Gemelli and the people on the side that are board game people. Board games don't forget about board games. All you need is as far as a gaming club in schools are concerned, is quite simply a student or two and a teacher that wants to hang out. That is it. And you just got to take the step, and you got to say, I want to be a mentor to some kids through gaming. Like, that's all it is. It's there's no skill level required. I'll use a Mr. Osmansky. I have a teacher named Mr. Osmansky. He is the smartest man I know, and he is socially awkward. He teaches physics and was a nuclear physicist in a Navy submarine. Like, he is up here. But, and Jeremy can attest this, but he's also up here when it comes to gaming. And he has his own little gaming club, which is an offshoot of our video game club, that meets every Thursday after school, and they throw down board games. And he explains, and you should hear him as a dungeon master. I'm a 9th level troll, and he snarls, and these kids get into it. And all of a sudden, Mr. Osmansky isn't this teacher that you can't relate to anymore. And that was it. Like, literally, that's it. And Jeremy, I don't know if you want to add to this, but you just want to support or deny what I just said.
Oh no, like,
yeah,
it's nice to see that. Like, personally, I can't connect to him on an intellectual level because I don't ever pay attention in school. But
thanks, Jeremy.
Gotta pay attention.
This isn't live, right? But whenever I see someone so passionate about a game like that, it makes you want to get into it too. And I think that personality helps to bring kids who might have otherwise been like put off by like, I don't know what I'm kind of doing, but his openness to everyone coming in is a great asset in extending and like opening up the club more.
Yeah, it literally is a teacher and some students. And it doesn't even have to be a teacher. It just can be anybody in the building. So as far as I'm concerned, just take the step and try. You know, what does the Yoda say? There is no do, only try, or only try.
No, there's
only
no
do,
try,
right?
only do.
There's only try, there's only do. Well, that's
It's
what,
the thought that
listen,
counts.
I am a jock. All right, I'm a jock. I'm a proud jock.
Okay. Yes.
Awesome.
I knew we get that in there at one point before we did.
I saved it to the end.
You did. But this is great. I think, Tristan, there's a great question here from Nathan about resources that the Chicago Public Library can use.
Oof, there you go.
I'm just taking a quick glance because I know I missed some, but
yeah. I did send Nathan my email address because we may be able to connect after this. And if anyone is interested in connecting with me after this in regards to what we can do at public libraries and around the nation, if you want to do something similar, I'm going to put my email address in the chat.
And Josh, feel free to do the same. I did, or you can use that QR code, folks.
Shameless plug. I drew an arrow. I don't know if you noticed. Did you notice I drew an arrow with the break?
I did do that.
I did.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But great. Thank you so much. I think we're probably getting booted out of this room.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I also put the links up, Tristan, for pictures and the new article. So stay in touch with these folks, and you guys are doing incredible work with young people. So thank you so much for.
Hey, shout out to DJ for hosting us. Hey,
Yes. Thank you, DJ. Thank you so much.
Thank you, DJ.
Jeremy, am I doing it right?
Yeah, there it is. A little hard hands. Come on.
Check me out on YouTube at Just Jeremy. I teach you social
Just Jeremy.
skills. Just Jeremy on
Yes.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Just Jeremy
Nice.
show.
Nice.
Man, she really threw me under the bus for that one.
It happens. Hey, listen, it happens.
So
Beautiful.
thank you, everybody, for all the great questions in the chat.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.